I'm Alex Christoforou. I am with the Duran, a geopolitics podcast.
Israel and Palestine.
Big topic.
What do you think the role of the European Union should be?
I don't think the European Union can do much as it is right now. I don't think it has the power to do much of anything.
As a member of the European Parliament, I say this is probably true what you are saying.
I think the EU could have acted as a counterbalance to Biden. So Biden comes in and says, we're going to give a blank check to Netanyahu to do whatever he wants. And I think the EU could have come in and said, no, wait a minute. We don't agree with you. But they didn't do it. They went along with Biden 100%.
I'm voting in all the stuff pro Gaza. I think what they're happening there, it's a genocide. And also I feel so hypocritical. We support so much Ukraine with so many billions, but the Palestinian people happening similar things there, and we don't say anything.
A lot of the media organizations in Europe are probably getting money from USAID. How else do these media websites generate revenue? Do they really generate it from what? The Google ads? I know the business inside out. I'll tell you right now, the Google ads are not enough to pay for a staff of 10 people. I think there's this belief that it'll be easy for the US to knock out Iran, which I think is a wrong.
You think this is likely in the next 4 or 5 years to draw Trump into a war?
I think it could happen in the next 6 months. You destabilize the leadership. The thinking is you could probably get some sort of a regime change.
But they try to do it in a lot of countries.
It never works.
It never works.
It never works, but they always do it over and over and over again. Assange said that the goal is to create the forever wars.
Why?
Money.
Who are you?
I'm Alex Christoforou. I am with the Duran, one of the members of the Duran with Alexander Mercouris. And we have a geopolitics podcast. And I also have a channel, Alex Christoforou. You can find it on all the platforms. You can find the Duran on all the major platforms. And Alexander Mercouris, the other part of the Duran, also has his own channel. So together, we form the Duran. We have 3 channels. We focus on geopolitics and news.
And this is your living.
Yes,
you make a living
absolutely.
From talking about Russia, the war in Ukraine, and
news.
Erdogan, Trump, Ursula von der Leyen.
Before Ukraine, we talked about Brexit a lot. We talked about Trump and Russiagate. Remember all of that, the impeachment and everything that was going on with Trump back then during those elections. And then now we have the war in Ukraine. Of course, we have the war in Gaza, the Middle East. There's always content to talk about. Unfortunately, most of it is bad, but we talk about it.
It hits you sometimes when you talk about all these bad things.
Yeah, I talk about almost exclusively bad things all the time, every day, 7 days a week. But my channel, I try to take a lighter approach. I try to be a little more comedic in what
fun,
fun. And then I also show people
walk
around.
In the streets
So I lighten it up.
By the way, I want to say, guys, that a lot of the times I watch their channel to understand about something. For example, I was watching recently your podcast with Alexander Mercouris.
Yes, Mercouris.
It's that you were talking about Romania, the elections and all this stuff. So whenever there is a topic that I'm interested in, jump to, or whenever you have guest on like Messheimer or
Sachs
or David Sachs, it's so I am a fan of this channel. So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
And we just finished, guys, a 2-hour conversation podcast in Greek. And now
the Greek, now we're doing the English.
Now we're doing the English version, but we didn't talk about Israel and Palestine
big topic.
Before. So
big topic.
I'll allow you to start.
Well, the conflict has started again. There was a ceasefire. The first phase of the ceasefire that Trump pushed before he even became president, and unfortunately, the ceasefire. It was
a big attack, right? A big attack.
There's big attacks every day now, or every day over the past 4. I believe the ceasefire broke down 4 days ago or 5 days ago. There are big attacks now, and I was listening to Witkoff, who is Trump's Middle East envoy, and he was on Tucker Carlson. And after listening to Witkoff, even though things things in Gaza are horrific. I left that podcast after listening to it a little bit more optimistic in that Witkoff said he believes that they most likely will find a way back to a ceasefire. Of course, the Middle East and...
They didn't break the ceasefire.
The ceasefire crumbled. It fell apart because they couldn't get to phase 2. They finished phase 1.
What was the agreement? Just for 30 days?
Well, the agreement was. Let me try to remember exactly what happened. The agreement for phase 1 was that Hamas said that phase 1 was completed, and that they can move to phase 2. Israel and Netanyahu. Phase 1 ended on March 1st. Netanyahu said that Hamas was taking the humanitarian aid into Gaza and using it for their own purposes. So he put a blockade on Gaza, a food and humanitarian blockade. And he then came with the demand that we're not going to move to phase 2, because it's a 3-phased ceasefire agreement. We're not going to move to phase 2 until you release all of the hostages, alive and deceased. And then Witkoff came and negotiated a partial release of, I believe, 11 hostages he negotiated. And he said, let's use the 11 hostages to get from phase 1 to phase 2. And Hamas was saying, no, let's get to phase 2. Phase 1 has been completed. And then you had the Houthis, Yemen, who came and they said, if we don't open up the blockade on humanitarian aid into Gaza, we're going to start hitting ships in the Red Sea again.
What's the connection with the Houthis?
Well, the Houthis, they've come to the defense of the Palestinians in the region by saying if we don't solve the crisis, the war in Gaza, we're going to hit ships that are moving through the Red Sea. We're not going to allow trade. We're not going to let ships to pass, specifically Western ships or Israeli ships or these types or collective West, let's say, trade that takes place.
That was effective or no?
It was effective. It was very effective under Biden, especially under Biden. It was very effective. But when the ceasefire came, the Houthis said, okay, if there's a ceasefire, we'll stop. But then
so they kept doing that until the ceasefire.
And then
they did that.
They did that, the Houthis, under Biden, mostly under Biden.
So they killed a lot of people and
I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think it was so many people. I believe 4 people either died or were injured. I'm not sure about the statistics, but a lot of ships got very scared to move cargo through the Red Sea. You have the insurance and all of these things. They got very frightened because it was a lot of risk to move cargo through the Red Sea. So it was causing a lot of problems in trade.
Interesting.
And so the ceasefire came. The Houthis then backed off. They said, okay, we're not going to hit any more ships. But then you had the blockade.
Why they were in favor of the Palestinians? Because of religious reasons?
Yeah, they've come to the defense of the Palestinians. Perhaps the only country in the region that has come to the true, like you could say, an actionable defense, not so much words or diplomacy. They said, okay, enough. We're going to actually put pressure to solve the conflict.
And why the rest, you think they shut up? And they don't? No, they don't shut up.
They don't. It's not as actionable, say, as the Houthis, who are actually hitting ships or were.
We're not in pro-shooting ships, by the way, guys.
No, we're not. But we're just saying what they did. We're saying what they did. Look, the other countries, for various reasons, have a different approach. There are countries that would like to establish a normalization of relations with Israel. For example, Saudi Arabia and Israel. They've tried to normalize relations. But Saudi Arabia has now placed the condition that we're not going to normalize our diplomatic relations until the Gaza situation is solved. So each country has a different approach. Of course, Saudi Arabia, we know their relationship with the United States, petrodollar and all of these things. So it's a little bit more complicated for Saudi Arabia. But nonetheless, the Houthis came out and they said, we're going to take action and we're going to hit any ships that are passing through the Red Sea until the conflict in Gaza stops and until this is solved. And They stopped. When there was a ceasefire, they did stop. But when the blockade came, they waited a couple of weeks. Then the Houthis came out and they said, look, if we don't get to phase 2 and the blockade is not lifted against the Palestinians, we're going to start to hit ships again. And then Trump came back and he said, don't you dare do it. He then launched strikes on Yemen, and everything started to fall apart with the ceasefire. And so now we're at a point where we couldn't get to phase 2 of the ceasefire. We couldn't extend phase 1. We couldn't get to phase 2. And now the conflict has restarted in Gaza. Trump is now striking at Yemen. And we're now looking at Iran as well. Now we've got tension between the United States and Iran. So, things have gotten very tense over the past couple of weeks.
So what the fuck will happen? How do you read the situation? By the way, it's important for me to mention here in the European Parliament, which I'm a member of, I am voting so far in all the stuff pro-Gaza. I think what they're happening there, it's a genocide. Just to clarify this. And also I feel like there is a diaspora, like we support so much Ukraine with so many billions, and we are so hypocritical with us letting us, the Palestinian people, happening similar things there. And we don't say anything because of the Israel lobby, because it's not just strategic move for us to do. Like, I think it's, So
the EU leadership took, like Ursula, they took a very wrong position in the beginning.
What was their position?
Well, they basically followed the position of Biden, which was to just, give Israel a blank check, do whatever you want. Which you can't do this in politics. You never give a blank check. Never give a blank check in life to anybody in general. You have to, when you're dealing with
bro, like we're saying this, okay, it's kind of you're joking, but it's like things
it's true
that people are going to die for.
Yeah. So you have
Literally.
to. Yeah.
So it's not fucking hell.
You have to act as a restraint at certain times as well to say, okay, well, we're going to support you, but X, Y, and Z. You just can't give a country just do whatever you want. And, geopolitics doesn't work like that ever. But yeah, you're voting without a doubt, you're voting with what I would say is the majority of the world in their position on what's happening in Gaza. Absolutely.
What do you think the role of the European Union should be in this? Should we just shut up and
I don't think the European Union can do much as it is right now. I don't think it has the power to do much of anything. I think if this is,
as a member of the European Parliament, I say this is probably true.
I think maybe in the past, when the conflict first started, and I think they could have done a lot of things. They could have acted.
But because we lost trust, not because we're not powerful, because we lost trust. We lost our sense of moral compass, what we're doing, all this stuff.
Well, you voted to the Biden administration. I think the EU could have acted as a counterbalance to Biden. So Biden comes in and says, we're going to give a blank check to Netanyahu to do whatever he wants. And I think the EU could have come in and said, I'm confident that the Europe of old, the old Europe with the old leaders that it once had, they probably would have said, no, wait a minute, we don't agree with you. Like what happened in Iraq. Not every country in Europe sided with the United States when the United States invaded Iraq, when Bush invaded Iraq.
Jeffrey Sachs was saying this to me, that he was saying Europe had to do the same thing on Ukraine, stand up on this like we did in Iraq, and did the same thing in Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. But they didn't do it. They just agreed. They went along with Biden 100%. And so I think this did a lot of damage to the reputation of Europe. So I think now a lot of people look at the European Union and they say, what is the European Union going to do? Nothing. They're not going to really do anything. Are they going to tell the United States yes or no on anything? No on anything? They're going to say yes. So, what can the European Union do? Not much. I think now it's the United States that is the player, and Russia. I think Russia is going to have a role to play in this, at least with Iran going forward.
In what way?
Well, the big problem with
And
Iran.
also there, I want you to throw Turkey in the mix for me to understand also what's the role of Turkey.
Well, Turkey's role is, it goes to Erdogan and the moves he made in Syria mostly. I mean, Syria has now been carved up by three forces, but I pretty much look at it as two forces. You have the Israelis who have built now who have carved out a buffer zone in Syria, and they've made it almost to Damascus. I mean, they're on the outskirts pretty much. You have Turkey, which came in and took up most of the north.
They took land, you mean?
They came in, and the U.S. still has its presence, but from what I understand, Trump is trying to get out of it. The U.S. base that's in the northeast of Syria. So there's a small U.S. presence now. Trump's trying to extract the U.S. out of it. At least that's what he says. And then you have the HTS, which is the new government, which removed Assad and they came in power. HTS, which is Al-Qaeda, ISIS, nothing else. And they're a part of Erdogan, though. So, I mean, people look at it as three entities involved in Syria, but in actuality, you're looking at two. You're looking at Israel and you're looking at Erdogan and Turkey. And Turkey's proxy is the government in Syria, al-Jalani. Now, Israel and Turkey, they may have came in together and carved up Syria, but now they're butting heads in Syria, and things are getting tense again.
Yes,
between Israel and Turkey.
Why though?
Why? Because Erdogan, he took a very pro Gaza Palestinian position and very anti-Israeli position about
Erdogan pro-Palestinian.
Yeah, that's how he positioned Turkey, as the champion of the Palestinians. But in actuality, what was going on was that he was quietly aligned with Israel, at least when it came to Syria. And they moved in at the same time. They got rid of Assad, and they both moved in and they took the parts that they wanted to take. But now they're facing each other. They're across the line from each other. And Erdogan is trying to go back to that position that he had, say, 6 months ago or a year ago before Syria, which is trying to position himself once again as the champion of the Palestinians. And it's not working. It's not working. And they're now starting to butt heads, Israel and Turkey. And Erdogan's in all kinds of trouble domestically. He's arrested his competition, who was going to run for president. Syria is proving to be quite a headache. It's not so simple to control what's happening in Syria. He's got his proxy there, HTS, but things are not good. We had the massacres of the Alawites, the Christians, and the Druze just the last week. That would have never have happened if Erdogan told them to stop, but he allowed it to happen. So he's got a lot of problems, Erdogan. Of course, the one thing about Erdogan is no matter how many problems he has, he always finds a way to get out of the mess that he's in. I don't know how he does it.
It's been 20 years now.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, but he always manages to come out the other end. Okay, so we'll see how he does it this time. I have a feeling that he's bitten off too much that he can chew here. That's just my sense of things. But once again, you're talking about Erdogan.
So you were trying to explain me the situation in the region in general with Russia as well, and then
Russia
with
and
Trump.
Yeah.
Well, explain me everything now. What is happening?
Okay, so
basically, I'm a bit confused. So is Iran the problem of everyone?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, Iran's the big boogeyman for the big problem for Israel, for Netanyahu. I mean, he's got Iran on his brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? And the United States. Historically, the United States, the neocons, much of the political establishment, even Trump, the Trump administration, they don't like Iran. They don't like Iran. They would prefer some sort of a regime change in Iran, and they would prefer to have Iran completely change its system and somehow align with the West. But that's not going to happen. And And so now you have a situation where Netanyahu feels like everything that's going on in the region, especially with the Houthis, that this can be a springboard to get the United States to commit to some sort of military action against Iran, because the narrative is that the Houthis are supplied by Iran. All the missiles, all the weapons that the Houthis are using to hit the ships is...
The Houthis in Yemen.
In Yemen, it's all sponsored by Iran. And so the calculus is that the United States, if they really want to get to the root cause of why the Houthis are able to do what they do in the Red Sea, it's not enough to go after Yemen. You have to go after Iran. And so
and that you are saying that's true. That is probably Iran funding.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Not completely. I don't think it's completely Iran. I think you're taking agency away from Yemen and the Houthis. I mean, they fought against Saudi Arabia for how many years? 6, 7 years, and they could not be defeated. They weren't defeated. So I think it's a bit too simplistic to say it's all Iran. But the perception is that everything, all the problems, at least for Netanyahu, his way of viewing the world is the region is all the problems are because of Iran. Everything. It all goes back to Iran. Hamas has everything. It all goes back to Iran. And his solution is to try and draw the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. And
you think he will be successful?
Trump's main concern is Iran getting nuclear weapons.
Which you don't think they
Well,
have.
I think what's going to happen is, look, Iran's close.
It's been close for years now.
It's been close for years. It's been close for years, but it is close. Well, what prohibits Iran is their own government is against going nuclear. It goes against their government, their ideology is to obtain nuclear weapons. But there are parts of the Iranian society, the higher up officials in Iran, who do believe that the best way to secure their interests and their safety is to get nukes. If they have nukes, then that'll act as the only deterrent from Israel or the United States. So Trump's main concern now is to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Where Russia fits in is that there's only one country that will be able to mediate between Iran and the United States, because Iran can't directly negotiate with the United States. The United States can't directly negotiate with Iran. They can't.
Why?
Because they consider them off limits.
United States.
Yeah.
And also Iran?
And also Iran. I mean, they just don't have any diplomatic relations. But Russia can play the role of acting as mediator. And Russia can actually go to the United States and say, look, we don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons either.
I want to pull up a map.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia doesn't want Iran to get
myself.
nuclear weapons.
We are going to put a map, guys, for you as well to see if you want visual. Yeah, continue.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about geopolitics without knowing the context of the maps.
Where it is. So Russia can play the role of mediator and of also assuring the United States that Iran isn't going to have the capability to have nuclear weapons. Not to have nuclear energy is one thing, but to have the nuclear weapons, Russia is the only country that can position itself to say with absolute certainty that Iran is not going to be able to have nuclear weapons. They actually have a treaty now, the Russians and the Iranians. And Russia is well positioned to be on the ground in Iran and to monitor the situation.
To make sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons.
And it's in Russia's interest. Russia doesn't want Iran to get nuclear weapons.
So nobody wants Iran to have nuclear weapons.
There are forces in Iran that do want to get the nuclear weapons because they feel threatened. Rightly so. Rightly so. They feel threatened by Israel and by the United States. So there's the thinking.
By Russia or no?
No. With Russia, they have a treaty, but there is the thinking in Iran that the only way we're going to be able to protect ourselves is if we have the nuclear deterrent. That's the only thing that's going to protect us. But Russia can come in and say, look, what we could do is we can we have a military agreement. We have a treaty. We can provide you with weapons, non-nuclear weapons, defensive weapons, with the US saying, okay, we can agree. And what we'll do as Russia is we'll make sure that they don't have the nuclear weapons as a deterrent. So, I mean, Russia can play the role of mediator, of a bridge from the US to Iran. They can also play the role of a monitor to make sure that what Trump is asking, no nuclear weapons, Russia can deliver. And they're on the ground and they can make sure of it. And it's in everyone's interests. So here everyone's aligned on this. But of course, for Netanyahu, he doesn't get the smash with Iran that he wants.
He wants that.
Yeah, he wants the US, but he wants the US to do it.
You think this is likely in the next 4 or 5 years to draw Trump into a war?
I think it could happen in the next 6 months. I mean, it's a dangerous situation, right? It's a very dangerous situation. It could go 50-50.
What that will mean? How this will happen? In what forms?
It's going to be bad. I mean, very bad. I don't know what forms you have. You can,
like they're going to send troops?
Airstrikes into Iran. But it would be war. It would be an act of war. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it could destabilize the whole region.
Which Israel, this is the goal for been a lot of years to make this.
Yeah, well, I think Netanyahu has this belief that Iran is weaker than it makes itself out to be. I think there's this belief that it'll be easy for the US to knock out Iran, which I think is a wrong estimation. Yeah.
There is a lot of people, like 80 million, 85 million. It's a big country.
It's a huge country. It's a difficult
to
terrain.
Go with a war with a country that has 80 million population.
80 million people. It's got advanced weapons. I mean, it's got a big military, a good military. The terrain is very difficult. Very mountainous, very, very difficult terrain.
So Israel,
it's got its allies.
Israel will fight that war.
Well, they would prefer the United States to go in. Not so much. I don't think it's so much of an invasion as it is airstrikes to destabilize. You destabilize the leadership, and therefore you could probably get some. The thinking is you could probably get some sort of a regime change. Or something could happen to destabilize the current leadership. And
but this was never fucking... They tried to do it in a lot of countries.
It never works.
It never works.
It never works, but they always do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it never works.
No, it never works.
Never, right? We cannot recall. They attempted to... Yeah. I read statistics that they tried to have war. NATO, the United States started war, and Europe started 250 wars in the last 100 years.
Yeah. It always turns out bad. It always turns out bad. That's the problem. Even you can make the argument.
Make these people against you forever if you do stuff like this.
Look, this is the thinking that they have. Unfortunately, the neocon type of thinking, this war footing that they always gravitate towards. They come in thinking it's going to be very simple and very easy. If we just hit them hard, then the people will rise up, we'll destabilize their economy, we'll destabilize their energy infrastructure, whatever it is. Then the people will rise up, then they'll remove the regime, and then we'll have a democracy that's aligned with us. Whatever's going through their head, a more controllable government that we can control. But it never works out like that. Even when you destroy the country, like what happened in Iraq, it didn't work out to the U.S.'s advantage.
Yeah. They removed their stuff.
They removed the guy. They removed Saddam, but it didn't work out.
And now they left all the stuff there, and they left.
Yeah. Well, that was Afghanistan. Yeah, they left all the stuff Afghanistan, Iraq. It never works out the way they picture it to work out. But Assange said that the goal is to create the forever wars. It's not really about a solution.
Why?
Money.
Can you explain me this money?
Money, the weapons, military.
Explain me how they make money out of it.
Oh, you make a lot of money in the weapons. You make money in all the companies that are around the weapons, that are supplying the troops, that are invested in the war effort. The think tanks the NGOs in Europe and in DC, all of these businesses that are invested in creating these papers and these theories about how we have to remove this guy and that guy, and if we go to war with this country and that country, then we're going to be in a better position to get energy or to get whatever resources. There's all these think tanks that are coming up with these very elaborate, very clever ideas as to what the United States needs to do, what the European Union needs to do, what NATO needs to do in order to better their position on the geopolitical map. It's a chessboard for them. And so if we remove this piece, or if we destabilize that piece, then we're going to be in control of this area, and we're going to be more powerful and richer and have more resources. And they come up with these fantastic ideas, but it never works out the way they imagine it in their heads, because at the end of the day, they're just imagining stuff. These are all theories that they haven't put into practice, and then when they put it into practice, everything goes to hell.
So who gets rich out of this stuff? You say the American companies that make weapons?
Well, the weapons companies for sure. The politicians that are supported by the weapons companies, that have their campaigns paid for by the weapons companies. All the ecosystem around the weapons companies. It's the way I look at weapons companies, think of it in the way that you look at like technology companies, like Apple, right? You have the company that actually makes the product, say that makes the phone. And with the phone, you have all kinds of different things around the phone. You have earbuds, you have whatever, you have all kinds of other hardware that they make around the phone. But then you have a whole nother ecosystem, which is the apps, the developers, the software, the other gadgets that fit into the iPhone. And they're also making all kinds of money, and they're also building big businesses. The same thing with the weapons makers. You have the weapons maker, but you have a whole ecosystem around that company.
And a lot of companies in Europe are making the same, or they are mostly United States companies profiting?
I would say mostly the United States, but you have European companies as well. You have UK and EU companies.
So you are saying that
you have
also maybe they are sponsor of European politicians as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you have the NGOs as well. You have the Soros guys and all of these guys who absolutely are sponsoring the politicians. This is not controversial stuff that they're sponsored by NGOs or these organizations like Soros or whatever. They're floating around the halls of Brussels as well, because they also have an agenda that they want to push through Europe. Usually that agenda is aligned with the agenda that they're trying to push through the United States, because it's the whole NATO collective West agenda. They see their power projected in a U.S. Europe entity. That's how they view the world, and it's through this entity that they can project their power more effectively.
Okay. But it's hard for me. So you're saying this is similar with the USAID money, this Soros money?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're connected?
Well, Soros is in ways connected to USAID, because his organizations were, from what I understand, they were getting money from USAID, which is interesting because you have this multi-billionaire who wasn't really spending his own money to do what he was doing. He was getting it from USAID.
So smart.
Yeah, that's how he was doing it. But yeah, you had, USAID had a budget of what, 40 billion? So it was spending 40 billion, more than the CIA, I think it was their budget. So they had 40 billion going into all of these programs, and many of them were about destabilizing or changing the makeup of countries and governments around the world. That was what most of their programs were about. So yeah, USAID, and it wasn't associated with any part of it wasn't part of the Pentagon or the Department of State or anything like that. You had this separate entity with a ton of cash going around doing all these little pet projects, destabilizing pet projects around the world. And to what effect? The money was a waste.
And we had a lot of this stuff in Europe. Maybe
They're giving a lot to Europe. A lot.
We seem a bit destabilized here in Europe. So maybe they did their fair.
Well, let me throw it your way. No, look, I mean, a lot of the media organizations, I'm not saying all, I'm not going to name names, but a lot of media publications in Europe were probably getting money from USAID.
Political.
Sure. I mean, how else do these media websites generate money, generate revenue? Do they really generate it from what? The Google ads? The banners on the side of the website? I know the business inside out. I'll tell you right now, the Google ads are not enough to pay for a staff of 10 people. It just doesn't work like that.
You're right, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Like, and also these TV stations and all this stuff, the business model is
from
not
advertising, really?
Is not there 100%.
No, it's not there. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you know the business as well as I do. It doesn't make any sense that they're able to staff hundreds of people from advertisers because you know the rates, I know the rates. It doesn't add up, right? But, you know, look, Politico, a big publication, huge in the US.
And in Europe, it controls the parliament. Let me say that.
Yeah.
Political controls the parliament.
So you have this big publication like Politico.
I'm controlling the parliament. I mean the opinion of the people. They influence. They're afraid. Like, will not write an article about you and all this stuff. They're trying to please them. They swore. Right. Maybe they are. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, it has a big influence in the European parliament.
We could write a good article about you, or we could write a bad article about you. Right? We can create a scandal about you. Right? So I mean, you know, they have leverage, but the way Politico is doing it, which is now this is also not controversial. This has been shown, is that they were taking the USAID money and they were actually giving out subscriptions. Some of those subscriptions that were being paid for were $10,000 a month, $10,000 a year in a subscription to a website, not video, not $10,000 a year. So this money was going to politicians in the US, and they were taking this USAID money and they were purchasing subscriptions for this media organization. So, I mean, you know, there's all kinds of ways that all of this works.
For them to write good about them, right?
For them to be writing the stories that they write.
They were right.
So, I mean, you know.
That's why we have the rise of influencers now.
That's why
like you are a lot of people, they say, they write in your comments, you are my news now.
I give the news to a certain percentage of people, not enough.
In a fun way. Walking in stupid neighborhoods inside.
Yeah, walking in neighborhoods. Look, but I mean, you know, I'm small. I'm small time compared to some of the bigger publications or even some of the bigger podcasts.
But there is a lot of you type of people now that they are rising more than ever.
I think there are, yeah. I mean, they're rising, and you have some people that have become very big. You know, you have like the Joe Rogans, say, or the Tucker Carlsons.
You know, they are United States. We don't have European things, right?
No.
Like, you are the biggest European person that talks about this, right?
Yeah, I don't think we have many Europeans. Yeah,
and you and Alexander, that's it, right?
Europe is behind in all of this, which isn't a surprise because Europe is pretty much behind in a lot of different areas.
Yes, but also I think Europe is more complicated with media because what language you're talking about.
Yeah, the languages. The language is a barrier.
Yes. So now, hopefully, when we solve this with AI to immediate dubbing and all this stuff with your voice, we saw this in the Zelensky interview of Alex Friedman to the Modi interview of Alex Friedman, that the president of India. So it's more hopeful for this in the future. But yeah, we need our Joe Rogan here in Europe to do stuff, to talk about Europe, about the European problems.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
That's going to be hard to get, That's going to be hard to get. Because, I mean, you know, can you get a Joe Rogan in Europe? Probably not.
Why?
I just don't think it'll work in Europe. I think you have to do something different. I don't know what that is, but it would have to probably be a different style or a different type of show.
Yeah. I'm just saying something similar.
Yeah, something similar. You need that.
This philosophical.
The way Europe is going, Europe is moving in the opposite direction, though. I mean, the thing about the U.S., which is always an advantage of the U.S., is they do have the free speech mentality, which is built in. Right. So, I mean, Europe doesn't have that. So I think that's why it's going to be a bit more difficult.
Well, you said, because someone was calling me, I was distracted. You said that Europe doesn't have the mentality of what? Of
the free speech.
Free speech is one of the things that I'm talking about in the European Union, in the parliament. And always when I talk about free speech, Elon Musk retweets me because it's a common interest that we have. And I say it in a way for everyone to understand all this stuff. But you think we don't have free speech in Europe?
Well, I mean, it's not in a constitution like it is in the U.S. I mean, the U.S. it's the first. The first one is the right to free speech. So I mean, I think for the U.S. it's definitely more a part of who they are. A central part of what it means to be American is free speech. Where in Europe, we can say that we have, to a certain extent, free speech, but it's not a part of our constitution or our makeup, our identity. I don't think a European identifies as a person who takes pride in free speech, where an American is someone who says, yeah, I can speak freely because I'm an American.
Interesting. I've been researching this topic a lot. And do we have freedom of speech in Europe? I think overall, yes. But in the COVID pandemic, it was a huge censorship, I think.
Sure.
In Europe. And also, we're banning the Russian media. We talked about it before. I don't agree. But I'm afraid that now they have the DSA. The DSA, it's basically says that it's up to the member state to decide if something is misinformation or malinformation.
They went after Musk for
what does that even mean, malinformation?
Who decides that?
Yes, and that's so if a government if a member state in Europe decides that this is misinformation, they have it in the law to delete it. So it gives a loophole for governments to censor whatever they want, because you can label everything as misinformation if you don't agree with it.
Sure.
Where is the truth? Who are you to judge and all this stuff? So I say overall, because this is new. This DSA is 2 years in the making, and now it's just going to apply slowly. So, but I'm afraid that I think we have freedom of speech overall now, but I'm afraid how this will be used in a similar crisis like COVID, like other crises and all this stuff.
Look, I think Europe has the freedom of speech. Once again, I don't think it's codified in a document, but it's there to a certain extent. I think you're right. It can be taken away with a COVID, like what happened. It could be taken away next day. But the DSA and the malinformation, all of that, I think is very sinister. I think this is a very sinister act. I'm not on board with any of the labeling of misinformation or malinformation or whatever you want to call it. I don't think
for everyone.
I think this has been solved already. I think actually X has pretty much solved it with community notes.
Not entirely.
Not entirely. Do you ever solve it entirely?
It's a good step.
It's a good start.
But you know the difference, because I said I researched it. So basically, the other platforms, what they tell you. So we have companies, third-party companies, NGOs, that they are funded by the European Commission. And their job is to censor stuff.
Yeah.
Do I trust those things in Europe?
Ridiculous.
And the companies are not forced to comply. They are, let's say, use this to fight. And when X didn't use this, and they said, no, we're not going, everyone attacked them, and they said, you remember it was, and they lost all that advertisers in the beginning. So they don't say it, but they put a lot of pressure for everyone to comply.
Who are these companies?
Who are these companies? Who are they? Why are they deciding? People? Do I trust someone that the European Commission is paid to say about this stuff?
No.
So that's why I'm saying it's a very good step forward to live from that and to go with community notes. It needs a lot more work in the future.
I don't think it's perfect community notes, but I think it's a very good start.
For everyone to know, community notes is what Twitter is putting, X is putting.
And the other platforms are going to start to put it.
Yeah, Facebook said that it will start doing that as well. For now, I didn't see it.
I haven't seen it,
And basically, the community with a very clever idea, like when a lot of people agree and that they disagree in the past and you are ranked, blah, blah, blah. It label a fact, label facts. And under the video, it says that I had it in videos of mine. You said factually wrong things. Yeah. So it's interesting. This is it gives more information, a lot less.
Yeah, they don't get it right all the times, but I would be fair to them and say that community notes most of the time. They're pretty spot on.
You know, the good thing is with community notes, there are other ways that they are censoring. We don't see it if they are right or wrong. The other methods that I told you before.
We don't see it.
Because they're just deleting content, these companies and all that.
Agreed.
But with communities, we see it at least. So transparency also helps for
look, the Digital Services Act is just another way for the European Union to get more power into the center of Brussels. That's all it is. That's all it is. In my opinion, there's nothing else to it. It's just about Brussels deciding what you can say and what you can't say because they're afraid that people are going to start to say some negative things about the way they're managing the union, which is their right. Which is their right to say it.
It's crazy. All this there is a lot. We need to fight disinformation. We need to fight misinformation. We need to fight malinformation. Like, why this is the enemy now? Why disinformation is the enemy now? We have freedom of speech to say and we decide.
Because they're not doing a good job. That's why. Because they're not doing a good job. And they're afraid that people are going to start talking. And if people start talking, then they're going to lose their position. They're going to lose their power. They're going to lose their money. And that's the last thing that they want to have happen.
Yeah. It's a bad sign when someone is taking some small steps to take your freedom of speech away.
Yeah, exactly. It's a terrible sign. It's a terrible sign. But you know, the problem for me, the misinformation thing, I think a lot of it can be solved by the platform. I think Community Notes is a very good start towards solving it. I don't think you're going to solve it 100%, but I think that's life. You're always going to have misinformation or better information. Some information is just better than other information, more accurate, more factual. Some parts of a story are correct. Some parts could be wrong. You know, I could say, this drink is blue and gray, but someone may say, actually, it's blue and white. Okay, well, you know, I got a little bit of it right. You know, I mean, I don't think that a lot of misinformation is not black and white. I think there is a lot of gray and a lot of interpretation as well. And I think Community Notes, as you said, can add a lot of context to
especially with all these AI videos and all this stuff now, deep fakes and all this.
And you know what else adds context? Comments. And the community as well. If the community, especially when you're dealing with social media, is if you're saying stuff that's inaccurate, they will let you know.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, they will let you know.
If you get views.
If you get views, If you don't get views, what do you care? If it's misinformation, If you're not getting anyone to see it, it doesn't matter.
So now we're talking a bit about the media and how it works and all this stuff. Tell us your personality. I'm very curious. Why the fuck you're doing all this stuff? What is your motivation? Like, why you chose this topic, the politics, to talk about this for stuff? And what does your business look like?
Look, I started this. I fell into it. I don't know if I would say I consciously said I'm going to do videos or talk about news in this way. But I started writing about politics and geopolitics in 2014, 2015. And then I realized that articles, at least back then, I think now it's changed a bit because you do have Substack and communities, which I think have really managed to.
But generally, the world is moving away from.
It was moving away,
before.
But you do now have platforms which are doing a good job with articles and getting articles out there, distribution. But back then, I realized that if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to get out there, then you have to explore the video angle of things.
You didn't like it, or you liked it?
I tried it. I told Alexander, because Alexander was also writing. Very good writer too. Very good writer. I told him, I said, look, let me do a video and see how it goes. I have no idea what I'm doing. And actually, I did a video, one of the first videos I did on politics. It was at the Costa Coffee in Limassol, here at the roundabout, right? So I sat there on the porch, and I just had my MacBook, and I had the camera on my MacBook, and then I had my headphones with the mic.
Interesting.
So I did a video, and it was like a 5-minute video. And then I went back home, and I saw, tens of thousands of views on it. When I put it up to YouTube, yeah. And I said, this is interesting. I said, an article's never done this, right? I've never had this with an article.
How many people were reading the articles back then?
Oh God, if you got 2,000 to 5,000 views, that was considered a success. If you had 10 comments on an article, that was, if you had 50 comments, it's incredible, right? But here you're doing a video and you're getting hundreds of comments, and you're getting 30,000 views or 50,000 views. And you're saying, wow, this is really getting out there. And so after I did that video, I approached Alexander and I said, okay, let's structure a show, and let's frame it more as not so much debating, but just more as a conversation about politics.
Because you have the same views.
We're very different personalities. We have similar views, different personalities.
Where do you disagree? You disagree on stuff?
I don't know if we disagree on... where do we disagree? I don't think we disagree on much. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of topics that we've disagreed. Maybe we have different approaches to how things should work. But I think more than anything, we're just different personality types. And it just worked. The chemistry worked. And so that's how we structured the show. And we started 5 years ago. I mean, no one was talking about politics when we were doing it, geopolitics especially. No one. No one was touching.
Really?
No one was touching Russia in English. No one was talking about Russia, the EU, everything that was going on. We just started talking about it, and we talked about Brexit a lot. We talked about Trump and Russiagate. A lot of people were talking about that in the U.S. But we had our spin as people outside the U.S. looking in. So we put a little bit of a different flavor onto Trump's first presidency and the impeachment and all of that stuff that was going on. And we covered Russia extensively as well. So we actually put a focus on Russia, talked about China. And then we had the conflict in Ukraine and a lot of...
It was a big boom on your
it was
channel.
A boom, it was a boom in the community of geopolitics.
People started being interested.
Yes, people started to be interested in geopolitics. Unfortunately, it needed a war for the interest to occur on geopolitics and what's happening in the world, because the war, this was a war, this was a big war, and it affected a lot of people. It affected everybody in Europe. It affected people in the United States. So, I think it had a big effect on people's lives, everyday lives. Things got more expensive. We got inflation. We had flights being banned. We had media being banned. So you had all of these things starting to happen because of this war in Ukraine. And the community got big. I think a lot of people started to take interest in geopolitics.
So you saw maybe a 2-3 times X the views that you were getting in after?
I would say like it depends. I would say 2x, but I would say it was a more consistent 2x. Like when we were talking about Brexit or the EU, Trump and Russiagate and his impeachment, you know, we would get views. And sometimes we'd get a lot of views, but it wasn't as consistent.
Topic views. It was more on the topic.
One video would hit, and then it go back to like a normal viewing level, and then another video would spike and go back. But now we're at that spike level more consistently now.
So how big is this business now that you have that? You are wearing a t-shirt. Guys, find that Duran and buy t-shirts from that cool brand.
Yeah, it's a good brand. We have good quality shirts, but I always thought of approaching this business, the social media, doing the news. I always thought of it as a way to, or actually, let me say the way that we were going to keep independent and to continue to do this was if we managed to have some sort of products or something. So we looked we looked at the subscription through locals. You know, we have YouTube, we have Rumble, we have all of the platforms, and then we looked at the merch because we had two choices. If we want to do this as a living full time, and because we put out a lot of videos, you know, we'll put out 4 videos a day, 3 to 4 videos every day, 7 days a week. That's a full-time job, especially if you're doing long form. So the way to do this full time is either we do ad reads or we create our own product, and
which ultimately is more sustainable to do. And also it's difficult to do ad reads when they war in Ukraine. Companies are not
they're not trusting.
Not want to put their products after you say, oh, and then today these 1 million people died.
It's hard. Ukraine. Yeah. I mean, the good thing about ad reads, which, you know, is something that I understand, the advantage is that you don't really have to do anything other than just read. You don't have to deliver a product. You don't have to find the product. You don't have to create the website. You don't have to do anything. You just read your ad, your 15 or 30 second spot, and you're done. But it's, as you say, it's, you know, the topics that we do, I don't know how successful ad reads would be. And for me, I liked the idea of merch because it's a way of our viewers being connected to the community. I mean, we support you. We want you to continue to broadcast and to continue to do the news. And we also get something out of it. You actually get a tangible product that I can wear, a shirt or a hoodie. That's a good thing. It's a good deal. It's a good agreement that you have with your viewers. You support me. You help the channel to keep going, and we give you something that we think is of good quality that you can wear and you can use. So I mean, it could be anything. I mean, you know, some people do shirts, merch. I've seen people who promote coffee, teas. I think these are good ideas.
So you have also the Patreon, I heard you saying?
We have Patreon, but mostly locals.
What do you mean locals?
Locals Locals is now a part of Rumble.
Explain maybe.
It's a subscriber. Locals is a subscriber.
Not only this, explain me also your business. Where is your revenue kind of work mostly? Not because you get also from YouTube.
Yeah, you have YouTube, you have the merch, and then you have Locals, which is the equivalent of, I would say it's the equivalent of Patreon, but it's more of a news feed, where Patreon is more, I think Patreon is less community focused. It's more, you put a video maybe behind a subscription paywall and people can view it who are subscribed to your Patreon. Where I think that Locals is more about having a news feed where everyone participates. It's like a private Facebook feed. I think it's the best way, or private Twitter feed. So everyone in the community, they can put up their posts, their news. Of course, you put up your shows as well. And
more interactive with the community.
It's more interactive with the community, yeah.
And they have news they post stuff about
people post on other topics as well, or they post their own news. So we have people on Locals who are very active posters. They're putting up news stories, every day or every other day.
For you guys to see it.
Yeah, we see it. Yeah, I go through the locals feed, and many times I'm choosing my topics depending on what the community is posting, because they post a lot of. I can't get to everything, so it helps me out in that the community is saying, "Oh, this is an interesting story. Check out this story," but they're posting it, and people are commenting, and it's private. So there's that sense of community in there.
Make a pie like percentages. How much revenue comes from this, and this percentage?
I would say it's all equal in a way.
YouTube?
I would say...
How much percentage? 30%?
I would say if you broke it down 30, kind of.
30?
You have the merch, you have YouTube, and then you have the locals, yeah.
Interesting. So that's basically the business model.
I think that's the business model of all content creators, or at least if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, I think you're going to have your platform, okay, and whatever the revenue model of that platform is. Every platform's different. So you'll have your main platform or a couple of main platforms. Then you'll have a subscription. And then if you want, you're either going to have an ad read or you're going to have your own merch. You're going to have one of the two. You may opt not to have the ad read or the merch. Everyone's different, but most content creators, whether you're in news or not in news, are pretty much doing that model. Now, the subscription can be locals, it can be Patreon, it could be YouTube has subscriptions, it could be X. X now has the subscription as well. But usually
it depends on the influencer. Like, for example, Mr. Beast and creators are choosing to go more the product, just have a product and just focus on that one. Especially, like, for example, Feastables now, Mr. Beast chocolate is valued at $5 billion. So, So
he's got a huge platform, yeah.
So, not every influencer, but you are right. Depending only on the AdSense.
If you're going to do this full time, you have to figure out a way to
be sustainable as well.
Sustainable.
Every time, because one time when I was a YouTuber, now I'm still a YouTuber, but I was getting like 40,000 on the AdSense a month. The next month, 5,000. So it's a bit up and down. You cannot.
Yeah, you had a huge channel on YouTube. I think you had millions of subscribers.
2.7 million.
Yeah, you have a huge channel. So you can get those. If you have 100,000 or 200,000.
Yeah, but your CPM must be very good. So
on news it's not good.
No, really?
No,
how many? You don't get $10? How much you get?
I don't know. It's not. I think like travel, entertainment, fashion. Those CPMs.
You have it now on your phone? Can I just see the CPM? It's interesting.
I could show you after.
Okay.
I'll have to look for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
To see because I know that in news, especially in this high level stuff that you are talking about, it should be high. Okay. For example, interesting.
It's much higher in more advertisable topics.
Okay.
Right?
Maybe you are right.
Look, we're very ad. The topics that we cover, as you said, are not very ad friendly.
Yeah. Syria today, people these many people. Assad did this.
If I was doing a travel channel or something like that, I would be very ad friendly, right? If people would want to advertise on our foodie channel or something.
What is your goals? What do you want to achieve with all this stuff? What is your dreams? As a human, and also with this. And also in the future in general. And also, why are you not involved with politics as well?
No, I don't have the makeup for politics, to be in politics.
Why?
Me, myself. I'm just a more introverted person. I'm not.
What?
I'm more introverted. I'm not so much giving speeches or going out and campaigning. I can't do that. That doesn't interest me as much as making the content interests me.
So
informing people interests me.
Applying all this stuff to a country doesn't interest you? Like, for example, if I tell you now you're the president of Cyprus, this is not interesting. All this knowledge.
I don't think I could be a president. I think, I don't even know if I could be an advisor. I think Alexander would make a much better advisor. what I can do is lighten things up a bit.
What?
I can make things a little bit lighter, give the information in a different, more entertaining kind of format. I mean, I've got the way I look at what I do specifically on my channel is it's informing, but my goal is also to entertain as well in a good way, to lighten things up, because the topics that I cover are very terrible, very heavy. And so, if you can make it more digestible, then I think that's a good thing.
You want to continue with this in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look,
you are happy with this?
Yeah, we're very happy where we are. Of course, we want to grow the channels. Of course, I mean, we have a goal. We would like to get the Duran is about 460,000 subscribers on YouTube. It would be cool if we could get to 1 million. But I mean, I think we're a couple of years off from that. And
maybe if another war happens, we'll be closer.
Unfortunately,
joke. This is a joke, guys.
No, I mean, it's a joke, but I mean, the views come when bad things happen. Yeah, unfortunately.
And when you are well positioned to cover them.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of views if you're talking about all the good that's happening in the world. If you're just doing feel good stories, you're going to get views, but it's the tragedies that people want to figure out what's happening. Why is this happening? Why is there a war here? Why did this happen? Someone has to report it. So I mean, we report it with accuracy and with facts. And we've been proven right a lot, which is why we continue to grow. I mean, we have good analysis. I think that's something that's important. We have good analysis, and we take a lot of emotion out of the analysis. I mean, it's emotional. We smile. Sometimes me and Alexander joke. We're not serious in suit and ties, and we're very serious about it. So it's a very human touch, but the analysis, we try to deliver the facts. And we do deliver the facts. Sometimes people don't want to hear the facts. Sometimes people appreciate the facts, because, a lot of the news is, a lot of things that are going on in the world are emotional. But there's stuff that's happening.
But you are not only giving the facts, you have context. That's the important.
Yeah, we have context.
This is the most important thing.
Yeah, we do provide context to everything that's happening. Absolutely. And that takes us to a place where we're better able to understand what's happening and what's going to happen. And like I said, sometimes things are going to happen in a way that we don't want it to happen, or that people don't want it to happen. But it doesn't change the reality of this is where we're heading towards. Whether it's good or bad, unfortunately, this is where our understanding of the events, the context is taking us to. And I think if you understand that, you're better off to prepare for what's coming.
Okay, so I think because we've been here for 4 hours, doing stuff since the time that we started.
Wow.
So this was fun. Thank you again. And as hopefully a lot more members of the European Parliament will listen to you, your show.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for watching until the end. We love you.
Take care.